This is the Guided Podcast, an interview with the fly fishing industry's top guides and brand ambassadors. On this podcast, we cover topics such as the guiding lifestyle, conservation, different fisheries globally, and gear and technology to improve your game. I'm your show host, Greg Keenan. Before we begin today's show, let's thank our sponsors. Scientific Anglers is the leader in producing the world's best fly lines for over 75 years. Scientific Anglers have set new industry standards with their SA Amplitude family of fly lines, both in technology and performance. See the difference for yourself today at scientificanglers.com. Show your show support and follow us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to Guided. Today our guest is Arlo Townsend. Arlo, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Greg?
Good, man. Good. How's the weather down there in Reno, Nevada?
It's our usual July weather. We're pretty hot. We're getting into the 90s in the afternoon. Starting off pretty comfortable in the 50s, but by 10:30, 11 o'clock, you're shedding layers, or you're shedding all layers.
So you're fishing naked.
Pretty much.
Crazy. I love it. Hey, man, I hope you guys are staying safe down there with everything that's going on. But really briefly, things affecting you.
Oh, like everyone, it's kind of a day-to-day, week-by-week, month-to-month ordeal here. We really shut down here in Reno. I'm based out of Reno, guide on the Truckee River and Pyramid Lake. And well, the first place to close down for us was actually Pyramid Lake, which was a big bummer because, well, that's where I do a majority of my guiding in the spring. So March is like peak time in Pyramid Lake, as is April and May. And that's when we are the busiest out there. And they shut us down, I think, the first week of March out there. So that was a big bummer. And then Reno as a city was shortly to follow Pyramid Lake, as far as, Pyramid Lake's on an Indian reservation, so it was easy to shut down. And then Reno kind of followed suit as far as, the rest of the cities of the West, as far as shutting down businesses in early March. And then, so I was dead in the water for a while, for sure. Had a few nice, really nice clients who try to support you through those tough times by making fly orders and buying gift certificates for their family members for future dates and things of that nature. So I am super lucky to have such a nice, big group of clients who support me as much as they do. That got me through a lot. And then, so when things opened back up, it was an enormous push of people wanting to go back out fishing. I'm not totally positive on the time frames here, but I want to say I've been balls to the wall for the last 6 weeks. People have wanted to get out and fish for the last 6 weeks here. And so it has been hard to find the day off within those, which is awesome. And I also feel super lucky for that, because when everything shut down, so did my previously scheduled calendar. All the dates that were booked for the summertime went bye-bye. So that was concerning. And then when things started opening back up, I want to say it was about May, maybe the first week in May, that empty schedule that emptied out filled right back up, and quickly, like surprisingly quickly. So we've been busy ever since, and I'm still riding that train. I'm still really busy right now. People want to get out and fish, and it's the summertime, so everybody, that's pretty normal. But who knows what's going to happen next? The feeling in the air is things are kind of slowing down again here. Businesses are kind of slowing off. I'm not sure if we're going to remain the open city that we have been for the last 6 weeks for the next 6 weeks. So I really don't know. I hope for the best, as all of us do. But just like everybody, making it through.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I mean, it sounds like, I'm really happy that you did pick up there, and you got your bookings back. And, furthermore, something you mentioned that was really cool was I remember all the campaigns going on to support guides and outfitters and fly tires during the isolation period, I'm going to call it, of COVID. And, the community just rallied together. And for me to actually hear, and for the listeners to actually hear an actual guide that benefited from people buying gift certificates and from people, donating or buying flies or doing whatever they could to help you out. It's like, man, that's so touching. That's awesome. That's the community coming full circle, and you're hearing it right here. So, I mean, like, what do you got to say to that?
That's the thing that has kept me guiding as long as I have been guiding. I've been guiding for over 17 years now, and there's been a lot of times throughout that where it's like, boy, is this the right career choice? And then you see one of your clients that you've been seeing for a long time, and you start talking to them like you do any friend, and you realize the relationships that you've built and through it. And it's amazing how quickly that time goes by. But yeah, it's a close relationship with my clients has been the only thing to get me through this. I can't thank them enough.
No, no doubt, no doubt. So, one of the cool things too that you mentioned was, you're fishing Pyramid Lake, and I know that's a very famous lake. A lot of anglers, it's on their bucket list or dream fishing and whatnot. Here you are doing this on a daily basis. Walk us through what's your guiding operation on there? What are you fishing for? Like, obviously you're fishing for trout, but what were the species that are you're primarily pulling in, the sizes, everything. Walk us through all that. That's just a fantastic opportunity for anyone to fish.
Yeah, Pyramid Lake is really a unique place. We're really lucky to have it in our backyard. It's a enormous high desert lake northeast of Reno, about 45 minutes away. It's on a Paiute Indian reservation. It has the largest Lahontan cutthroat trout in the world that swim around in it. It's a pretty, it's not a very developed place, we'll put it that way. There's only 3 small towns inside of the reservation, which is about 500,000 acres out there. It holds, again, the Lahontan cutthroat trout, which was the native fish to the Great Basin area that we're in, the Truckee River and other watersheds around us. They went the wayside. They no longer naturally produce within our watersheds here anymore, but they do run a hatchery program which fills up the lake every year. And it's just great big fish. It's people love fishing it. It's really an easy fishery. You're going out there maybe with some ladders. That if you've heard of Pyramid Lake, you've probably heard of people fishing off of ladders. Mm-hmm. Primarily what I do with my clients is bring them out to an easy to reach shelf line. Sometimes that's with ladders. Sometimes I use natural perches out there too. In fact, I would prefer to use natural perches rather than lugging a ladder out every day. But I do use ladders. Pyramid Lake is a place where you essentially want to keep your flies in the strike zone of the lake throughout the day the best you can. And that strike zone is the drop off or the shoal line of the lake where shallow water falls into deeper depths of 10 to 20, 25 feet. So it's a huge lake, 25 miles long, 10 miles wide, but we really dissect it as far as what we're fishing it. I'm not looking to really get out to the middle of the lake to fish Pyramid Lake. I think it's most productively fished from shore in the springtime, primarily. Its season is from October until the end of June. It fishes the best in the spring. And that's when all the fish that maybe were in the deep water during the warmer months come in to feed in that shoreline area where we then target them with our fly gear. They're big fish, so I often use some heavier gear than you usually use for trout fishing. I like to use micro spay rods out there, or trout spay rods.
Nice, yeah.
Pretty normal for me to use a 4 or 5 or a 6 weight, 11, maybe 11 and a half foot long rod out there. So they're built perfectly for what I do out at the lake, which is primarily suspend midge patterns in that shoal line I talked about earlier, with long leaders underneath an indicator. So like I said, it's pretty simple fishing, and the spey rods make roll casting out into that shoal area really easy, especially if you have a high bank or sharp rocks behind you, which there's a lot of sharp rocks at Pyramid Lake called tufa rock.
Awesome.
So that's the start of the day. Bring out the spey rod, set them up with a floating line. Scientific Anglers make some awesome tapers for our light spey rods these days.
So
their spey light line.
Yeah, I was just
one of my favorites out there.
Sorry, Arlo, I'm going to jump in here. So what are walk us through in detail if we're going to talk about it now, that's fine. What your setup is for the midge fishing and any other style of two-handed fishing that you would use to target these fish.
Sure. So it's again, let's say normal would be a 5-weight 11-foot rod. I throw a Scientific Anglers Spey Light 360 grain, or a Scandinavian Spey Light in the 360 grain variety on it. I like the fully integrated lines out there, so I'm not adding any tips. It's a full floating line. So I get, again, really simple. Mm-hmm. I'll string up the spey rod on the floating line on the spey rod. So I'll tie off of the end of the spey line. I'll have a 3.5, 4 foot long butt section, which is just some 25-pound hard mono, mainly 25 to 30 pound, I suppose. Wow. And I'll attach that to either a tippet ring or a micro swivel. Yep. And I'll put the indicator above that micro swivel or tippet ring. I'll have an indicator 3/4 of an inch to an inch in diameter, usually a thingamabobber, or a local guy around here named Jay Cockrum makes some great indicators called Jadicators. They're made of balsa wood, and I like using those out at Pyramid Lake. There's something to check out. Again, that's
definitely
Jadicators. And he's really a cool guy. He makes them locally up in Truckee, California, which is just a half hour away from Reno. But anyway, I'll either throw a thingamabobber, a Jadicator on there above the tippet ring or the micro swivel, and then I'll drop off usually anywhere from 6 to 9 feet of SA's fluorocarbon underneath that. I suppose about 7 feet underneath the micro swivel, using 3x SA fluorocarbon down to the first fly is a pretty common setup for me. And then another 18, 23 inches down to the second fly, just continuing the 3x setup, 3x fluorocarbon throughout. Tie non-slip mono loop knots to the midges to make them dance around underneath the water a little better for us. Tends to make a difference out there. And then, so that's a pretty easy setup. Your classic Western rig, only you don't have to add any split shot to the equation. Just 2 nymphs under an indicator, or 2 midges rather under an indicator. They're a little deep, I suppose, which is where the spey rods come into play. It just makes it easier dealing with longer leaders and indicators when you're using the longer rods to cast them out and manipulate them. So with that setup, we try to reach a place of the lake where you have I always try to find a place of the lake where you have a pretty abrupt drop off from, shallow to deep water. If you have rocks in the midst, that always tends to bring more fish in. I think rocks, which there are not a lot of rocks out at Pyramid Lake. It's primarily, there is the tufa rock I talked about, but it's primarily sand. If there's any kind of structure, there's not. I like it. I like the location. I'll put it that way. There's not a lot of structure to Pyramid Lake. So if you can fish around some rocks or something like that, you're more likely to be around a cruising point for the fish. And the reason that the shoal line of the lake is such a strike zone of the lake is because of that fact. There's not a lot of structure to the lake. There's no trees. There's no canopy cover. There's no, really abrupt ledges or rocky drop-offs within the lake. The shoal line, that drop-off into deep water is kind of the only place those big fish that swim around in that lake can hide their big bodies and maybe give themselves an opportunity to ambush a school of tui chub, a small bait fish that occurs out there. as they're cruising around. So the cutthroat, they kind of ride the valley of the shoreline. They kind of ride the places of the lake where the depth of the water takes a step down. They kind of cruise around that shoreline, around the entire circumference of the lake, and we just set our flies up, hopefully within their cruising patterns, and wait for the fish to do the rest. There's two ways to fish the lake. There's with the floating line and the midges. You can also strip flies out there, which is just as effective. Just takes more work, I suppose. I think I spend more time with the floating line out there.
So
I'm all over the place.
So when you're stripped, that's funny. And I'm going to get back to that indicator setup and everything, because it's like exactly what we're doing up here in BC in the high mountain lakes and whatnot, just not two-handed rods, which is phenomenal. And, I love that kind of talk. Like Stillwater is my thing. But, here we are. Like,
cool. Let's
talk about when you're stripping, right? You're stripping for these trout. Are you still using the two-handed rod for that? I'm just trying to. Or are you casting it, or is it single-handed?
Not really.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So sorry to step on you there. Yeah, for the stripping routine, I'm more comfortable with the traditional single-handed casting rod. Mm-hmm. When we're stripping flies out at the lake, we really want to get those flies down deep quickly. So when we're using our sinking lines to strip, say, Chewy chub patterns or diving beetles or dragonfly imitations. Mm-hmm. When we are fishing those out at the lake, those are flies that are not the suspended midges. We're getting them down and deep and fast, and the best line to do that is 25 to 30 foot long, heavy sinking head, which isn't the greatest line to cast with a spey rod. I think it's much easier, much more efficient to cast those long sinking lines with single-handed mm-hmm. overhead casting. Mm-hmm. So if I'm wanting to strip flies, I'm usually getting away from high banks or obstructions behind me. I want to find the sandy bottom. I want to get away from the structure that I talked about if I'm fishing the midges, because I don't want to hang up on that structure when I'm letting the flies sink and stripping them back up the shelf line. I want to actually let the line fall all the way down to the bottom and be in the sand, and then have my buoyant flies with no weight, and often flies with foam in them, to be floating just above the line that's laying on the bottom of the lake. And it's just much easier to do with a single-handed rod than casting a 30-foot
spey
sinking head with a spey rod.
Yep, absolutely. I just love it. I love this Stillwater talk for sure. So, Arlo, You mentioned in the beginning of all this about how there's a hatchery program and you're just so in tune with what's going on at Pyramid Lake. I might as well stick with this. You've mentioned that there's a hatchery program with Pyramid, and what other management, or is there any environmental or any concerns that you have with the lake? I mean, does it see a lot of pressure? Is there anything that we can do to be more aware of what's going on there?
I think it sees the same problems that all of our watersheds across the country are seeing anymore. There's a lot more people out doing this sport anymore, and there's a lot more people out just in general enjoying the outdoors, and water is an attractant to them. So I would say it's the pollution, litter, maybe not so much the anglers participating in Pyramid Lake, maybe not following the regulations of the lake, adhering to those regulations as strictly as they should be. As far as Pyramid Lake is by regulation a barbless fishery, I'd say on all the on all the flies that I find around the lake, on all the fish that I caught that you can tell have been caught before, maybe have a hook hanging out of their mouth, it is rare that I find a barbless fly that another angler has used out there. So I think that's just individual self-governing things that we always need to keep track of, and simply because there's more people out doing it, there's more chances of that occurring. So keeping the place clean and keeping the fish healthy, I suppose, is two of your biggest problems that I think the normal average individual can actually help. The other problems that go on at Pyramid Lake is simply the water issues. And Well, it takes a smarter man and a more powerful man than I to change any of those. So I can't even say I understand them as far as the laws of how much water from the Truckee River reaches Pyramid Lake. The Truckee River is what fills up Pyramid Lake, or not fills up, but that is the only influx of water into Pyramid Lake, and is a real important influx of water, because the Truckee River brings fresh water into Pyramid Lake. And Pyramid Lake is a alkaline-rich lake, which, if it doesn't get diluted, it doesn't hold the habitat that you need for insects and fish. So the Truckee River water brings in fresh water that keeps the, I suppose, ratio of alkaline to, or the amount of alkalinity of the water to a threshold that the trout thrive in. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how to change that, Greg. Like I said,
yeah, no, I think we all hear you on that, man. I mean, that's just a complicated can of worms. We'll leave it at that. So,
sure.
Yeah,
sure.
I
There's
mean,
more.
What's that?
Smarter minds than mine there's smarter minds than mine thinking about those things. Sure.
You bet there are. So, Arlo, you're an advisor to SA, and I mean, you're also very knowledgeable in your Stillwater. Just hearing you talk about all that, what's your role? Like, what do you do with SA as an advisor?
Great question. I suppose as an advisor, you're a positive ambassador to the company and to the sport. And so I look at being an advisor to SA as simply promoting the sport of fly fishing in a positive manner. It's as simple as that for me. Doing things the right way, respectfully, and in a manner that leaves it there for the next person to come along and enjoy it in the same way. That's kind of just how I look at it as SA. And of course, along with being an advisor, you test products, you give feedback on whether that product is working for you or not, and whether it's working for your clients or not. And really, it's just I suppose, an ambassador for being the nexus between telling my clients what the best product to use is. And then that's easy for me. I've always loved SA, and it's easy for me to pass on that knowledge to my clients and pass on my experiences with the SA products to my clients. And like I said, it's really easy. I feel really lucky to be able to promote such a great brand, because it's the brand I would be using even if I wasn't an advisor for them. So yeah, just being a positive ambassador for the sport, and I suppose helping to increase the product that they develop year in and year out.
Crazy. I feel the same too when I tell people, I'm like, just go SA. There's nothing else out there. Just don't even bother wasting your time. And,
sure.
I agree with that. But I say it in confidence. Do you know what I mean by that? So with their products, I confidently believe in and use their products. So it's just funny how that is. So I know where you're coming from on that. So, Arlo, I want to ask just really quickly here, if someone wants to, you are guiding, and if someone wanted to reach out to you, talk to you about your guiding, book a trip, get going on your rivers and whatnot, where can they do so?
Probably easiest just to jump on the website, and then all my contact information is there, and that's arlosflyfishing.com, ARLOS flyfishing.com. It's the easiest way to book a trip with me is simply to give me a call or write me an email. I suppose I get a lot of trips through text these days, which is fine as well. So text, phone calls, emails, those are the primary avenues to contact me.
Awesome. And those more tech savvy Instagram followers, do you have an Instagram handle?
Oh yes, that is also at Arlo's Fly Fishing, and I kind of just blend that in with the text texting. I get a lot of trips through the Instagram messages as well. Absolutely, yeah. Social media is, Instagram is the only social media I've felt comfortable with posting, and I'm still not as good as I should be as far as being up there day in and day out. But it's more pretty pictures of fish and pretty places, and those are the things I like. I like colors and things of that nature more than arguing with people online.
Oh, it's all right, buddy. Before I let you go, any last words for any listeners out there?
We talked about Pyramid Lake a lot, but the Truckee River is actually my main venue throughout the entire year, and it never closes. Just like the casinos here in Reno, the Truckee River is open day and night, 365 days a year. That's my bread and butter. That's where I do most of my guiding throughout the year. I'd say maybe a quarter to a third some years is guiding on Pyramid Lake, and the other 75% of that time is on the Truckee River. And I'm based in Reno, Nevada, but I also fish or also guide in California. So I have three places I guide, and that's Nevada on the Truckee River, California on the Truckee River, and a few other tributaries to the Truckee and other watersheds in California as well. So it's not only the Truckee and Pyramid Lake. I can always find a place to fish with people, and there's lots of places to explore in our area within the Sierras here. From Pyramid to high alpine lakes in the Sierras. That's throughout the year. I'm on one end of that circuit.
Awesome. I love it. I can definitely make sure I put all those details within our show notes. And Arlo, I definitely want to thank you for being a guest today on our show Guided. And listeners, I want to thank you guys as well. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Guided Podcast, sponsored by Scientific Anglers. If you like this podcast episode, please let us know and leave a review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And remember, subscribe to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast to get even more episodes of both Guided and the Fly Fishing Insider each week. See more at flyfishinginsiderpodcast.com.